Thank you for tuning in. This is Barry Burnett with Investing Insights with Barry Burnett. Tonight, this is a fantastic show. You're going to love the content because we're here with David Aniel, the owner of iEvict.net. iEvict.net has served me and my clients, entrepreneurial investors just like you, for decades, for over 2 decades. And what he says is spectacular information. It's for information purposes. It's not designed as a legal advice or a substitute for legal counsel. And it shouldn't be used as a legal counsel in this conversation. Every situation is different. No two are alike. So when you have a question on evictions or a problem tenant, you're going to want to communicate with David or someone in that field, in that world, just like him. I trust him. I use him regularly, and I refer entrepreneurial investors to him all the time. David, why in the world did you get into the eviction service?
Well, originally we were going to start out as a property management company, and after several months we realized that we did not want to get yelled at by both the landlord for spending too much money and the tenant for not spending enough money on the property. And it sort of morphed into evictions because that was one of the services that our company was offering originally.
Okay. So it was a backdoor opportunity that you saw.
Correct.
But you've been with it for
35 years this month.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you've got a real passion about this business. Some of the things that you've experienced, you've gone on the road and taught, and you teach to property managers and realtors all over Southern California, right?
That's correct.
And you have this passion because...
After seeing all the abuses that have been going on and all the mistakes that are going on, it's just one way to just help out people in the property management and the real estate business, which, that's something that's in our blood.
Okay, so mistakes.
There's a lot of them that landlords make. They can start out by waiting too long and thinking that the rent's going to be showing up later. The rent's due on the 1st. It's late on the 2nd. There is no 5-day grace period. There's no 10-day grace period.
Okay, wait. So all of these people who play this game of, I've got grace period, it's not a grace period. It's already late on the 2nd.
Yes.
And I've been practicing that for my practice for 41 years. If you pay on the 1st, it's okay. If you pay early, that's great. If you pay on the 2nd, you're late. But then what's the law on late period? What's the minimum that a landlord can require per contract on the late period?
1 day.
1 day. So many landlords give 5 days or 7 days or 10 days, and oftentimes that can be a mistake, right?
It's a mistake and a misconception.
Oh.
The late fee cannot be applied until the 5th day or the 7th day or whatever day is in the contract. And to make it even a larger mistake, a judge about 1.5 years ago ruled that late fees must be actual, not punitive. And the entire purpose of a late fee is to make it punitive to give an incentive to pay the rent on time. And so they would pay the rent. So the judge said you cannot ask for a late fee unless you can prove that whatever that late fee is an actual out-of-pocket costs.
Now, did that set precedent?
Yes. No one has challenged it.
For the state?
Yes.
Wow, what a knucklehead. Obviously somebody who doesn't understand how things work.
Yes. The prerequisite of owning real estate before ruling on it is not on the books yet.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a mistake to assume that you are just freewheeling for 5 to 7 days or 10 days because there's no late fee stipulated.
Correct. You can wait. Everyone wants a rent check. We're going to wait a few days to get paid, but it's certainly not a requirement.
Okay.
And if the tenant's a problem, there's no reason not to give them a notice on the 2nd.
Okay. And you can give them notice on the 2nd. But some of the mistakes with regard to giving notice, what are some of those mistakes?
Asking for the late charge.
Okay.
There are requirements now that Sacramento has passed and that judges have ruled that you must have a name of a person on there. You must have an address where the rent can be paid. Big mistake is putting a bank account number on there and having the tenants giving the tenants the information to pay to your bank account. With these days, with identity theft and identity fraud, why would you give anybody your bank account number? It has to have an address, phone number, days they can pay the rent, times they can pay the rent.
Oh, okay. So there has to be a level of accountability in that regard.
Absolutely. And if you're missing any of those bits of information, you'll lose the case in court.
And that's really unpleasant. Well, this is a really great start to a fabulous conversation. We've got a lot more coming. And this is Investing Insights with Barry Burnett here on KABC. This is Talk Radio 790, and we're talking with David Aniel, iEvict.net. iEvict.net. And while you're at it, go on and become a friend of this show at barryburnett.net. That's barryburnett.net. And we have been in business together for a long time because every once in a while somebody decides that they're going to live in a property or occupy a commercial industrial property that they no longer have the right to be in or that they never had the right to be in. So we were talking about mistakes. What are some of the real catchy mistakes where landlords can really get smacked, where they can get more than their knuckles busted?
Renting out the non-permitted guest house, rec room, pool room, converted garage.
Okay.
Besides the obvious liabilities if, God forbid, there's a fire or something, the city of Los Angeles will force the landlord to pay the tenant relocation fees.
Oh, boy.
In the neighborhood of north of $19,000. Plus, the city will want a very expensive fee to assess how much money is due. And you get to pay your attorney as well to prepare all the documents and take it through court.
So it sounds like you just talked about roughly $30,000 for having rented out an illegal guest house or an illegal spot. Now, I'm sure that's not just City of Los Angeles. What about the People's Republic of Santa Monica? It's probably equally or more punitive?
It gets into the more, might use the term punitive or crazy land. All the rent money that was paid during the tenant's tenancy before it was declared a illegal unit or before the landlord got busted for having an illegal unit, the tenant can sue to recover that money because it was paid for an illegal service. So the landlord is basically collecting money for an illegal service, which they're not entitled to, and every last dime can be recovered, usually in court. And usually when we're talking about the landlords on those cases, they're usually senior citizens who are the last group that can afford to dish out that kind of money because they're renting out a room on their property for some additional income.
Oh, boy. Well, now that's a big mistake, and we're talking about a lot of money to some poor person who is just trying to let somebody live. And who is it that among the tenant echelon that usually goes after this? Which tenants are the ones that have enough savvy to go after the attorneys and create court cases?
It's across the board. Some people understand what the law is, and they make a living out of it as being
professional tenants.
Professional tenants, weasels.
Yeah.
And sometimes they just fall into it. They could be living there. They're the tenant. They're low on money. Somebody gets their ear, and they decide to rip off their landlord.
Yeah, I imagine it makes interesting bar talk, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, this is an extraordinary topic, and we're going to come back with more on tenants and what we do with them as entrepreneurial landlords. If you want more information, go on iEvict.net. That's iEvict.net. That's David's service. And you can also go to barryburnett.net, and we will have links to iEvict.net. This is Investing Insights with Barry Burnett here on Talk Radio 790 KABC. There's a great deal more and some real zingers on tenant law coming up.